Yep, I finally decided to do a video on World of Warcraft, and this is going to be a long one. I guess before beginning this video, allow me to elaborate on my credentials. I like to call myself a Warcraft fan. I played through Warcraft 3 and then again through the Frozen Throne. I never played Vanilla WoW, nor did I have the chance to play through Burning Crusade. Unfortunately, my family was far too poor to afford WoW, let alone pay a monthly subscription to something like a video game. By the time Wrath of the Lich King came out, I had a job and could therefore finally afford to delve into the magic that I had experienced throughout Warcraft 3. Back when I played, leveling was much more difficult than it is right now in Battle for Azeroth. As a ret, I couldn't go around in heirlooms just pulling 10, 12 monsters for my quest and then just AoEing them all dead before I took any form of substantial damage. I recall dying underneath Dalaran to too many monsters when I was fully decked out in wrathful PvP gear trying to chase someone down. I remember the tedious journey to level up different weapon skills, class quests, not having my hand held throughout the questing process. There are so many differences between Wrath of the Lich King and Battle for Azeroth that it almost feels redundant just listing them here. Suffice it to say, it was a very different game back then. Now, ever since I bought the game, I have had an active subscription. I think it's around 11 years now since I began back in 2008. I have played every single expansion, normally for several months per year. I loved Wrath. It, to this day, is still my favorite WoW experience. Cataclysm changed the warrior that I mained, and the story of Deathwing was kind of lackluster, I guess, compared to what I'd experienced in Wrath. Then Mists of Pandaria hit, and I was thrilled. My warrior was back in tip-top condition. Bloodbath, bladestorming, everything with second wind to keep me alive. I was an unkillable, unstoppable Beyblade of death. And even though Pandaria seemed, I guess, very slow, or at least the questing system did, I enjoy the light-hearted theme of the Pandaren. Granted, it was at times a little over the top, but I generally enjoyed myself. Then Warlords of Draenor hit and made Discipline Priests the bane of every melee's existence, lest you play Frost DK. But even then, the story also was complete filler, but the zones were beautiful, especially by WoW standards. Then Legion released and improved drastically on the story, the characters, and made the game look better than I ever thought possible. Plus, they allowed us to use legendary artifact weapons that, although grindy, were a significant improvement over the Azerite RNG system in place right now. I have participated in every raid during every expansion, albeit on different characters over different accounts. I have never cleared a current mythic raid because I've never really been dedicated enough for that. The furthest I got was, I believe, Heroic Siege of Orgrimmar, or currently Heroic Uldir. But I have cleared everything else on normal as they were current content. I've done my fair share of PvP, thousands of battlegrounds. I made it to 1900 rating in 2s, 2100 rating in 3s, and I never really knew enough people to participate in 5s or rated battlegrounds. And while I may not have been that great at PvP, I'd like to say that I was at least alright at it. So basically, I've always participated in as much of every expansion as I possibly could. I've never been competitive enough to push the most difficult content, but I've always been content having accomplished everything each expansion had to offer. The same applies to Battle for Azeroth. I started the expansion 2-3 months ago with my wife, Adrian. She's never played WoW before, so this was a completely new experience for her. Her experience with MMOs came from games like Star Wars, The Old Republic, Terra, Blade and Soul, Rift, and Riders of Icarus. So she was used to, I guess, at least concerning base WoW and probably up until Mists of Pandaria, prettier looking games. I assured her, though, that the game begins to look a lot better and the dungeons begin to require additional skill and mechanics the further we make it through the game. Naturally, when I started with my wife, I opted to re-roll a new character to level with her. I was also joined by my sister, Wiggy, and her boyfriend, Eve. My wife saw the Nightborn and instantly wanted to play the allied race. I told her that that was an impossibility due to her not having ever played in the past and Blizz gating the new allied races behind reputation gains. She was gutted, as was I honestly, as the Nightborn are a very beautiful race. But then again, I have always made Alliance, so not like I really would have played it either way. She and Wiggy both settled on Draenei because they were the most aesthetically pleasing to them, and the Gift of the Naru ratio made sense as a PvE heal for tank and healer, which both of them went respectively. Leveling to 110 wasn't too difficult. My wife enjoys dungeons, so we made sure to run through every single dungeon at least once on the way to max level. While leveling, we did notice that something had changed, however, and that was that A, zones now scale to your level, and B, dungeons now scale to your level as well. Granted, both zones and dungeons have a level cap on them, allowing you to queue up or gain XP in areas until you reach the cap for their respective expansions content before moving you on to the next expansion's dungeons and zones. This was a surprise, I guess, for me, as I haven't really kept up to date with WoW news, and I didn't even know that they had this planned. Honestly, I feel like this was both a good and a bad move. It's good for giving players the freedom to level how and where they want to, but at the same time, most players just opt to go the fastest route anyway, and they generally ignore the vast majority of zones that you would otherwise visit. Then came War Mode. I love PvP, especially open world PvP. My wife, on the other hand, while leveling and learning her character, she prefers to avoid being ganked by level 120 no-lifers that gank lobies for shits and giggles. Thus, we rolled onto Storm Rage, one of the largest Alliance-dominated PvE servers. Or, it used to be one of the largest Alliance PvE servers, until I learned that PvP and PvE servers no longer existed. Instead, the two have more or less been consolidated into one, with the option of turning PvP on or off via War Mode. War Mode was appealing because it increased all our XP rewards by 30%, making the leveling experience much less of a chore, especially since we leveled before Blizz rolled out their nerf to XP requirements. Alas, I had forgotten that max level players have nothing better to do than to fly over leveling zones and swoop in to one-shot you, then camp you until you give up and log out, or forcibly respawn at a spirit healer, which isn't really all that much better. I know I can turn War Mode off, and we did occasionally, but I see something fundamentally wrong with the War Mode system. And that is that it forces players that play primarily PvE to turn it on. Otherwise, you won't get increased Azerite power, you won't be able to do faction killing quests, one of which recently actually gave Alliance players an item level 400 piece for killing 25 Horde and more. This means that in essence, if you don't have War Mode turned on, you'll be at a disadvantage over players that do have it turned on. Their necklace will level faster than yours, you'll miss out on potentially better gear. Like, I know Blizz thought that removing PvP servers was a good idea, but I know a lot of people that don't turn War Mode on ever, other than to participate in the Against Overwhelming Odds quest and Call to Arms quests each week. Then they just sit there, repeatedly getting killed, hating their life, and participating in content that they would never, ever have had to in the past, merely just to attempt to remain competitive. Talking about remaining competitive, what were Blizz thinking with the Azerite armor system? The artifact weapon could be frustrating, granted, not the talents you'd get on your weapon, no, those were perfectly fine. Leveling your artifact weapon itself, though, was a huge chore. So what did they do? They introduced the ability to grind out and level your Azerite necklace in the same way as the artifact weapon, and instead of giving you the talents you've been working hard towards, you're given RNG crap that is worse than what you had. Like, take for example my wife. She had an Azerite headpiece that had Enduring Luminescence, Blessed Portents, and Resounding Protection on it. That is pretty damn good. Like, that is almost as good as you can get as a Disciplined Priest from what I can tell. Then she got a piece 15 item levels higher that gave her Depth of the Shadows, Wound Binder, and Vampiric Speed. Like, are you for real? I had the same exact shit happen on my Fury Warrior, repeatedly getting Gemhide on my gear. Gemhide. Because I need that bonus avoidance as a Fury Warrior in PvE and PvP while I'm not taking damage. Speaking of which, PvP gear. I know Legion removed the traditional PvP gearing system that we'd used up until that point, entering battlegrounds and earning honor to purchase honor gear and entering arenas to earn conquest points for your conquest gear. But that system, allowing players to purchase the pieces they wanted, that was part of what made PvP worth continuing, or at least rated PvP anyway. The system in Battle for Azeroth, you earn 20 to 30 conquest per arena, and upon reaching your weekly cap, are given the item listed, which could be much, much worse, or not even for your spec. Or at least, you were until one of the most recent patches. Now we're at least given the option to choose between a small selection of same slot items. Gone are the days where you could work towards the piece you were missing. Now we're all given a predetermined piece of gear with the chance of obtaining additional pieces from winning matches. That's just... no. That's a terrible system. I don't want a predetermined selection of gear pieces that I have no control over. I want to be able to purchase the pieces I want or the pieces I need. I recall when I used to do raids and had a slot with a particularly bad item level gear piece on it. I could do some arena and I could replace it with a conquest piece that is much higher than anything I'd likely get for a while, upping my overall DPS and making me that much more useful to my group. There are just so many things wrong with the new PvP gearing system right now, but I'm just gonna leave that there as I don't want this to come off ranty. PvP, on the other hand, well, with War Mode came a plethora of issues. As an Alliance player on a server with a population larger than most, you'd expect there to be a decent representation of your faction out and about in the open world. However, at least on Storm Rage, regardless of where you go, regardless of what shard you end up on, regardless of when you play, there are always ridiculously large groups of Horde going around ganking Alliance players. Now, I am not saying that this is the case for every server, as I have read reports of Horde being outnumbered on Horde servers as well, but what this shows is a large imbalance in the PvP population. An imbalance that Blizz thinks that they can fix by introducing something like the Against Overwhelming Odds quest that gave Alliance players an item level 400 piece and not Horde. An imbalance that Blizz thinks they can fix by giving Alliance players a larger bonus from War Mode. Seriously, like, doing the Tortolan World Quest is probably one of the worst things in the game. If the Alliance aren't camping that area with 200 people, the Horde are. Yeah, it makes for some open world PvP, but let's be real here. 200 people ganking a few people of the opposite faction while they try and do their quest isn't really what I envision open world PvP to be. I remember fighting over spawns of monsters, repelling Horde that would come to our lobby zones and terrorize our lobbies trying to level. PvP now is just Zerg after Zerg of the dominating side at that moment. Most of the Horde I saw by themselves in the open world wouldn't even look twice at me. Same with the Alliance if they saw a Horde. Nobody cares about actually fighting one another. Everyone just seems to want to do their shit and get out. I'm not going to say that PvP in WoW is dead, but I will say that it is in a pretty stale state. Gearing in Battle for Azeroth is unique. I mean, I can't say I dislike the new way of gearing myself, but I can see how it could be a cause for concern for a lot of players. We have so many ways of gearing now. World quests, world bosses, daily emissaries, faction incursions, warfront rares, normal, heroic, mythic, and mythic plus dungeons, raids, battlegrounds, arenas, and naturally questing itself. I'm currently item level 394 on my main, and my wife is item level 399, I think. We have yet to push past heroic Uldir, and we're currently getting ready to move into heroic Dazara lore, but the rewards we get from both of them are still inferior to the gear we currently have. This is where I find potential fault. Raiding has traditionally been the way players go about obtaining the highest tier of gear in the game. In every game, pretty much, but with the introduction of Mythic Plus dungeons, raiding seems all but obsolete. The furthest I've made it was through a Mythic 12 Ataldazar. I can admit that I am not good enough to push any higher than that right now, but nevertheless, I managed to get various item level 400 pieces and 410 pieces from my weekly chest. I even managed a 425 Titan Forged piece. So, if I am capable of running Mythic 10s that reward me a level 400 to 425 piece of gear if they Titan Forge, and Heroic Dazaralor gives me a level 400 piece of gear, why would I run it again? Hell, Mythic Dazaralor only provides item level 415 gear. Yeah, that is the most difficult current content there is, and I can all but ignore it in favor of Mythic Plus dungeons that are just easier. So, while I do enjoy being able to gear myself competitively via dungeons, I do feel that at the same time, it kind of removes the importance of mythic raiding. I leveled my Havoc Demon Hunter and my Survival Hunter up to 120 by the end of that week. They were both item level 370. By week 2, they're both sitting at item level 385 to 390. This is through primarily doing Mythic Plus dungeons, emissary quests, and world bosses. Give it another month and they'll likely be both upwards of item level 400 without ever having stepped into a raid. Speaking of raids, they are normally heavily driven by story. Battle for Azeroth's story has a lot of people finding a lot of issue with it. Players are comparing the expansion itself to Warlords of Draenor, Blizz's largest flop in terms of player base numbers, and they're crowning Sylvanas the new Garrosh, a leader that just a few years ago would have never enacted what she has this expansion. Someone that would have been disgusted had someone attempted to do what she has done currently. Now for me personally, I'm loving the focus on Jaina, Sylvanas, and Talanji. And Wamsamdi, man, he is a truly fascinating character that I can't wait to see get more time in the light. However, unfortunately, that's about it. The story revolves around Sylvanas being a bitch, using the Horde as pawns, the Alliance attacking Talanji and her people, going to war, and well, as of right now, just I guess just like fighting one another. The story is very basic. There really isn't all that much going on, and a lot of people are of the opinion that the writers have absolutely no idea what they're doing with both the story or the characters. To me, World of Warcraft was a second life. I used to log in for hours every day. I felt like if I didn't, I'd end up missing something big. I spent countless hours helping other players gear via dungeons, battlegrounds, grinding gold, faction reputation, exploring, fighting Horde out in the open world, attempting and failing to climb the arena ladder, and just enjoying myself. However, after only a couple of months, I'm at a point where I log into WoW, I stand there for a few minutes, and I just wonder what I should do. My wife, granted, is still having a blast doing raids, but we've already finished them. So now what? Hit item level 400? Hit item level 410, 420? Continue repeating the same world quest, the same emissary quest, the same faction incursions? I don't know. World of Warcraft itself is a good game. Battle for Azeroth was a fun expansion, initially. But as you continue, after a few weeks, you just kinda have nothing left to do. And with how little effort Blizz has been putting into this expansion, it's a wonder why I'm still even subscribed. I don't dislike this expansion, I just don't really have anything to do this expansion. And that is with gearing 3 separate characters. I can't imagine how bad the monotony must be for players with only one. So in WoW's current state, would I recommend people play it? I would. If you begin from level 1, you'll likely get a solid month or two out of the game before running out of things to do. Whether or not you can find things to retain your attention remains to be seen, but nevertheless, WoW is a good game. But, like Warlords of Draenor, it's just headed in the wrong direction right now. It is definitely possible to fix the game like they did with Legion. And with WoW Classic right around the corner, they could potentially have more players than ever before. I honestly would not give up on WoW yet, nor would I recommend people not play the game in its current form. Things need fixed, yes, but is the entire game bad? Definitely not. Should you play WoW? Yes. Should you come back if you played Battle for Azeroth at the beginning of the expansion? Probably not. I truly hope that someone at Blizz watches this and just takes a little bit away from it. WoW has always been my game, and even though I won't cancel my sub, I am not enjoying the game right now. So until the game is fixed, whether that's with the next large patch or the next expansion altogether, I'll see you all in Eorzea.
We may accept this fate or defy it, but we cannot deny it.
Deny? I am not wont to run from my troubles. Until our friend returns, I will hold the line.